Hi, my name's Joe. This is a daily-ish vlog that I'm doing just for this little clothing brand that I've started called the Inward Markings Garment Company. The website is inwardmarkings.com and the Instagram is @inwardmarkings. And you need to watch the first 7 chapters of this to make sense of what I talk about today. The link to the channel is at the website, as well as the link to the shop. And this is chapter 8, and please, just to reiterate, I'm not presenting this as some kind of glorified account or as a guide to better living or telling you what to do or saying follow in my footsteps or any shit like that. I'm sharing this not just to raise awareness of the brand, but also because I think it's of general interest. So the couple of years that led to the formation of the brand has caused me to reevaluate my life previously. And it's been of such significance that I feel compelled to just share it through this vlog. This is my first video content on the internet, so it's not something that I would do lightly, and it isn't just to sell product either. And so the events that I've chosen are significant. It's not just me trying to retell my life. And I've arrived at a point where I feel certain that my life has been a destined process and that there's been a protective factor beyond the material realm that's been present in my life to facilitate that destiny playing out. And where I am now is where I have to be. And that's, inclusive of really bad shit that's happened in my life, experiences that were really, painful, etc. It's all been part of a process that's been necessary. From what I can, whichever way I look at it, they've been necessary to get me to the point I'm at now. The profound changes that I've experienced over the last couple of years would not have had the impact that they continue to have if I hadn't been through the life experiences that I've shared in this vlog. So where I left off with chapter 7 is the third and final near-death experience that I'm discussing as part of this series. And I was in a training role here in Victoria, Australia, and circumstances arose that pushed me out of that role into another role. And again, at the time, it just felt like it was just the way things were going, and it was frustrating because I didn't want to have to, because I'd only been in that training role for a couple of years, but the next role that came along was timed so perfectly, and I moved into it fairly easily. And if you want to look at it in the overall context and talk about the universe, it was like the universe was saying to me, okay, you've had kind of a particular experience in this field of harm reduction, where illicit drugs and the harms to do with them are the focus. But now it's time to actually have a look at something that's especially important, but has been kind of sitting on the outskirts of the work that you've done. So the area I worked in is semi-rural, and I'm pretty sure it's still the case, and one of the suburbs, it has like the lowest socioeconomic status in the state. It was certainly the case at the time I was working there, around a decade ago, and if it's not at the bottom, it would be around the bottom. And it was a real insight into the impact of illicit drugs, all drugs, legal, illegal, in areas where there's intergenerational trauma, low socioeconomic status, and because I was doing outreach and working with people in like a casework way, I was having like extended interactions with people, getting to know people over time, and hearing people's stories in depth. And it's not only, it can really show, it was a real, I was immersed in just the kind of shit that goes on in people's lives, and then how problematic drug use, regardless of the legal status of the drug, can impact on that. And there was a fuck of a lot of alcohol related problems, severe problems related to alcohol, and there was this real sense that I got over time working in the office I was in, that the alcohol cases were actually of greater severity for the most part, and involved medical intervention, and seemed to really be of a much greater concern than the stuff related to illicit drugs. And part of that as well was not just like the impact that it has on people's health, but just the accessibility. So sure, illegal drugs are still very accessible, but that's in the context of them being illegal. Legal drugs, I can't imagine what it would be like for someone with an alcohol problem, just not only walking out the door, but fucking turning on the TV or the radio, and some kind of ad being a trigger, or even just overhearing a conversation from next door. Like it is literally, our society is literally saturated in it. So that was a real kind of, it was my last major role in harm reduction, and it was a fitting way to kind of see things out, because it was kind of like a slap in the face regarding, this is really where it's at. Like these drug-related issues, this is kind of the nub of it, and then needs to be, and this is where resources really need to be devoted, because it can be so easy working in particular areas of harm reduction where you kind of get insulated from that kind of thing, whether it be because you're in an office primarily, or you are working with and among people who come from more privileged kind of backgrounds. And so, yeah, I was given, through my experience, I was given a kind of a comprehensive view. But then I was propelled further from there into a role in Sydney. So I moved states, and I mean, in terms of like my circumstances in my life, always kind of leading me into directions where drug use, especially heroin or opiate use, was readily accessible and kind of almost unavoidable. Around that time, I was in that final role in Melbourne during my final days. A very active heroin dealer needed somewhere to stay, and apart from his drug business, a decent guy, mental health concerns that were kind of impeding his day-to-day living. He'd been in and out of prison over a long period of time, but had come from a difficult situation as a migrant, and so there was. It wasn't just about the drugs that he was offering, but it was also about. I felt like it was important to help this guy out with accommodations, so he stayed with me for a period of time, and so it really made it very easy to access drugs, but circumstances not so much. Oh yeah, related to both that home situation, which you can imagine got kind of tedious after a while, and then also my work situation. There was there were factors in that. There's only so long you can work in that kind of environment with people who are struggling so badly. I mean, respect to the people who do it over long periods of time, but for me, there was only so long I could do it. So I then moved into a policy role in another state, New South Wales, in the city of Sydney. And factors then arose in Sydney where not only did I receive a large sum of money related to something that happened in my personal life in Melbourne, but I entered into a relationship with someone whose one of her parents lives in a city in Thailand, and I only stayed in that policy role for about 6 or 7 months, and then was offered a ticket to leave Australia and go to Thailand to visit this person's parent. And it was totally unexpected. I mean, the relationship was also unexpected as well, but it was a decision that ended my 15 or so years in harm reduction. So it was a big deal for me, as you can imagine, to leave behind this area of work that I devoted so much time and passion into, and to just kind of head out into the open road without any kind of security or idea of where it would lead, and leaving the country as well. But the thing that I arrived at the time was that it was an opportunity too good to pass up, regardless of the risk, and it didn't feel right to continue with something that I'd already been involved with for so long. And it wasn't about moving on from drug use or any kind of, or maybe that was deeply within me, but that wasn't part of my reasoning. There was options. So a way that I sustained my physical dependency was with a treatment drug called methadone, and there were options for that in Thailand. So that was part of the consideration, and it was really just about trying a new stage in my life. Now, the interesting thing about Thailand, I primarily lived in Bangkok, as I said earlier, but and a lot of Thai people that I meet here in Australia don't actually know this, but the Thai name for Bangkok is Krung Thep, and Krung Thep translates in English to the City of Angels, and I only thought there was one City of Angels, which I'm sure you'll all know, but it turns out that Bangkok too is the City of Angels. So I'm just going to leave it there. See ya.